And good morning. It is 24 minutes after 7 o'clock, and joining us in studio this morning from Bristol Law Office, Matt Bristol back with us. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Not too bad. Yourself? How's the weekend for you?
Good. We had actually Sunday 2 people drop in from out of town.
Oh, nice. Some guests in town.
Yeah. So the other one was kind of passing through, so we had lunch with them. And the other's going to be here for a couple of days. So
Okay.
We're going to have pizza tonight and
Nice.
talk about old times and that kind of stuff.
Well, good. Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be good,
Yeah.
and give each other sage advice.
There you go. So you got an anniversary coming up.
I do on the
Awesome.
10th here, so or the 11th. I'm sorry,
Uh-huh.
Wednesday. Today's the 9th, right? Yeah, the 11th. Yeah.
Today's 9, yeah. And Sean had a birthday. How old?
He is, I think, 37 officially.
So he finished 37. He's starting 38.
I think so. Yes, I believe so. Yeah, he's still youngin'. He thinks he's old, but he's not. He's still young.
Yeah.
Not to you. When you wake up and you don't have no explanation why things hurt you till that happens, you can't say you're old yet. So.
Well, he doesn't have any gray hair either.
This is true. It's kind of hard to take him seriously. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Of course, for folks that are not familiar, Matt Bristol joins us once a month, and as an attorney, just giving us sage advice when it comes to family assets, to family, legal things that every family should be putting on the radar in terms of, legal protections, asset protections, family protection of the valuables, and protection of what happens when the family
protect those family jewels.
Exactly, the family jewels. I was about to say, I feel like I'm ready for some Spaceballs or something here, but just kidding. But it's one of those things that when every time Matt and I talk, I'm like, well, of course that makes sense, but none of us don't think about these things because it's kind of hard to see the forest from the tree sometimes.
Sometimes, and you have to know what to look for.
That's true.
What to look for in the forest and the trees. And so recently the CDC lifted the ban on evictions.
Yes.
And so I always thought that was curious as to who gave them the authority to make that decision. I kind of had a problem
it kind
with
of
that.
seems like it's out of their scope of relevance there a little bit.
But in New Mexico, our Supreme Court is the one who banned evictions last year, and they have not lifted that.
Okay.
So the eviction ban was if a tenant could prove they could not afford the rent, whether it's COVID related or not. If they couldn't afford the rent, you couldn't evict them. But if they breached the lease agreement in any other way, you could still evict the tenant.
Gotcha.
Well, they haven't changed that.
Okay.
Not yet. But last year, what they also did was they halted a collection of consumer debt cases. So they did not halt commercial debt cases. They did not halt child support, just consumer debt. They halted collection methods. So those 2 methods are execution, a writ of execution, and a writ of garnishment.
Okay.
So they're called writs just because they're written down.
Gotcha.
That's all the magic.
That's
there is.
all writ means. Huh?
Yeah.
It sounds scarier than it does.
It does, yeah, it does.
When someone says, I got a writ of this on you, and it's like, ooh, what did I do wrong?
Yeah. So they are changing that. So let me.
Well, and so obviously when we talk about like the evicting for, COVID, you can't and things, but obviously if a tenant trashes the apartment because they're drunk or something, and that's why you're throwing them out, that COVID doesn't protect that person. Is that
Correct.
Well, but is that one of those hard to prove deals? Or, I mean, they're like, well, I can't afford it because of COVID. Yeah, but you also didn't have to trash the place either.
Well, it's can't afford the rent, period.
Gotcha.
It doesn't have to be COVID related at all.
Okay.
Just can't afford the rent. But the tenant has to prove they can't afford
So
it.
if they're paying their rent and they trash the place, you can still throw them out.
Yeah, if they trash the place, they have a pet when they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
You got people in there you're not supposed to.
But if they can't pay the rent and trash the place, then
they trash the place, then they've breached the lease.
Okay.
And you can kick them out.
But if they still could, like, that's what I'm saying, that their protections in COVID go away at that point.
Yeah, if they breach the lease in any
Gotcha.
other method,
Gotcha.
They're out.
Okay, good. That's the part I was like, well, what about the person that can't pay the rent and was trashing the place?
Nope, the trash the place, they're out.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, and using drugs, they're out.
Gotcha.
That kind of stuff.
Unless the landlord's a drug user themselves and probably using that. That's another story for another day.
Oh, yeah, I got a story about trash in the place I won't get into. But on the consumer debt stuff, on August 2, they released two things.
Okay.
So for consumer debt collection, they're lifting the ban on that in stages.
Okay.
So the older the judgment is, the sooner that ban will be lifted. So September 1, judgment in cases that are older than 2016.
Gotcha.
And then October 1 for judgments from on or before 2018. So they're gradually allowing collection of consumer cases. So watch out, folks.
Gotcha.
And then a good one is for people who have a house and a mortgage, for judge, so the bank forecloses. So New Mexico's in a judicial foreclosure state.
Gotcha.
If you can't pay the mortgage, they have to go to court to foreclose. So the foreclosing creditor must certify that loan modification and loss mitigation negotiations were attempted with the homeowner before the case is even filed.
Okay.
The homeowners must be given information about their loan and possible ways to avoid losing the house.
Gotcha.
So now the lender is going to have to make some effort to keep that homeowner in the house. Loss mitigation, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So that's pretty good news.
Yeah, well, that's good news for the consumer. You know, I mean, and the law has always been, just because you don't know the law doesn't mean that's not your defense against it.
Right.
You know, that's always been the case.
Right.
And this is kind of at least kind of acknowledging that, okay, granted, these laws and things can get confusing, and unless you're a lawyer, you're not going to be well versed on all this stuff. So let's give people a grace period on that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal.
Yeah.
So so in New Mexico, if you're collecting on a debt against an individual, you first have to serve what's called the writ of execution. So the sheriff goes out. Well, you serve the person this list of exemptions 10 days before the writ, and they can claim their exemptions and file it with the court.
Okay.
And then after 10 days, if they haven't filed any claim of exemptions, the sheriff goes out and says, "What do you got that I can take?" If there's nothing the sheriff can grab, only then can you start garnishing paychecks or bank accounts.
Gotcha.
So you got to follow that process first. So one of the things we're going to talk about is, well, can they just come take your stuff? Are there some assets that are exempt from collection efforts? So there's a lot of misinformation about that out there. But if you think about the way I explain it is, if you think about the Wild West and the cowboy goes into town,
Sure.
goes in the saloon, starts drinking, starts playing poker, and pretty soon he's lost the family homestead.
Okay.
And the wife and the kids are on the street with nothing but the clothes on their back. So our legislatures decided that's bad.
Well, good job. Proud of you.
Yeah. I wonder how long it took them to figure that out. So there's a list of things, state law list of things you can keep no matter what, because we don't want our citizens driven below the poverty line.
Gotcha.
So the state law list of things you can keep is also available. And if you file a bankruptcy, you can have the same list of exemptions if you want.
Okay.
So, for example, your household goods, furnishing, clothing, all that is protected by law. Nobody can take those from you. They're exempt from collection efforts.
Nobody wants your FUBU T-shirt anyway.
There you go. You can protect, a homeowner can protect up to $60,000 worth of equity in a home.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
So if there's Mike and Kim, that's $120,000 worth of equity in a home. Equity's fair.
That's the kind of your start over money, I'm guessing here.
Well, so equity is fair market value minus debt. You have to keep $4,000 worth of equity in a motor vehicle.
Okay.
Life insurance proceeds are protected by law.
Okay. So no one can't take your money you got coming to you when someone passes on either.
Passes, they have a wreck, and so the other driver decides to sue. They can't touch the life insurance proceeds.
Gotcha.
In New Mexico, retirement is exempt from collection.
Really?
Yeah, and it's really broad. They say including but not limited to these 25 different things. And it's annuities are exempt, retirement. So Kim is earning teacher's retirement that can't be collected. When she retires and gets that retirement check, can't be garnished at the bank because it's retirement.
Gotcha. So she can never mind. She can get all kinds of money problems, and they can't touch that.
Yeah,
one.
pretty much.
Child support, nothing.
Well, except for child support.
Except for child support.
Yeah,
of course, most people aren't paying child support in retirement stage. I mean, most. Right. There's always an exception to a rule, but most people aren't in those two different boats.
Well, that issue came up one time of somebody's trying to collect child support and they're going to foreclose on the home, and the child support obligor says, well, wait a minute, I got an exemption, homestead exemption. And so the New Mexico Supreme Court looked at it, and they thought about it, and they said, well, this money is really for the kids, and you don't own nothing we can't get to. There are no exemptions from child support. You can take the clothes off their back. You can take their TV. There's nothing you can't grab to collect for child support.
Ultimately, they're the parent. They are the responsible one in this thing. So therefore, we are making you be responsible for something you created.
Bingo. That's exactly that's the reasoning.
Yeah.
Because this kid needs food and clothing and all the rest of that stuff. And,
which makes complete sense.
And you're obligated to support the child. And if you're going to be a jerk about it, we're just going to take everything you own.
Yep. You know what? Someone thought smart on that one.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. I agree.
But so really, this is what we're talking about. Obviously, if you're now, here's a question I have when we talk about this COVID, and this might be a different. I don't know if this might be more of a state government type question, but I know people are protected from the rent. Losing their rent. Getting kicked out, evicted, everything because of COVID here, but. We're in a world right now where anybody that wants to work can work because the job situation is pretty...
A lot of help wanted signs.
Yeah. So where does that... if someone's like saying, well, I don't feel safe going out and working, or they don't have to pay... where does that protection at some point say, no, you need to go get a job and do this? Where does the protections go away? Is that even in your vein, or is that all up to the governor at this point?
Well, it was the New Mexico Supreme Court that put the eviction ban in.
Okay.
So it's going to have to be them that lift the eviction ban. And so because the New Mexico Supreme Court controls all the judges, basically, they've told the judges you can't evict people. So that's how that ban works. As opposed to the CDC, I have no idea how that works.
Sure. That's my big, it's like at what point, and this may be a political question more than a legal question, but I mean, that
I don't know.
It's hard. It's hard to tell me when I'm like saying, oh, we're going to keep paying your rent because you can't work because of COVID, but there's a lot of people still working and there's a lot of jobs. Yeah. Now I get it. If there's people that their immune systems, they shouldn't be out. Okay. But if they're just strapping young people that can work that just choose not to, I don't know where's that line drawn. So.
Well, there you go. And what about these people who haven't been paying rent, and at some point they will be evicted, and at some point the landlord's going to try the writs of execution and garnishment to collect because that may be 12 months worth of rent. So I mean, we may have a big wave of bankruptcies at that point. I don't know.
Yeah. Well. It's a slippery slope we're going down here with the way this is being handled, and and I know that's not exactly why you're here legally talking about this stuff, but it's kind of a symptom of what's going on in the world today with this stuff, and I'll be very curious to see how some of this is going to shape up down the road here because I don't know. I mean, at some point, is there going to be businesses suing the federal government because they can't get qualified workers because the government's setting the table for them to not thrive as a business because they're basically holding back workers from them? I mean, by doing what they're doing, I mean, I know there's legalities on suing federal government, all this, but
Yep.
There's got to be a case made at some point. When is it saying that the precedent you're setting right now is hurting business in our country, and we're going to sue you for that? I mean,
yeah, I don't know the answer to that. It's a strange new world. Last summer, we couldn't have a Boy Scout summer camp, for example,
Yeah.
Y camps, that kind of stuff. So the Boy Scouts were working on this virtual stuff, camp. And we had some kids up there, some scouts up there who were filming different things so we could put on the internet. And so I went up, at the beginning as council president and said, wanted to thank you guys, gals, for doing this. We appreciate you making this effort. And this COVID stuff is really bizarre. And it may be 3 to 5 years that this stuff goes on. And they were just totally shocked. But my thinking was, well, if you're going to vaccinate the entire planet, it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and again, you go look at a history book and go look at this, just the Spanish flu, and that wasn't a 1 year thing or whatever. That was several years.
Several years, but it went away, and that was in the days before penicillin, and it just poof, went away one day. So, well, this stuff, it's hard to know. My buddy in Houston sent me a article from the Houston Post. Where husband and wife had gone to Argentina to visit relatives and had been there 6 months. They can't get out because the border's closed.
Wow.
The border is closed.
Hope they like Argentina.
Well, but can you imagine if the United States just shut its borders?
Yeah.
In or out? I mean, holy moly.
Yeah.
That's a pretty extreme task, extreme measure to take. So I don't know where this stuff is going to go.
Yeah, it's all you can do is do it the best you can for you and your family, and try to ride the wave. Sometimes
try to be smart.
Yeah,
all the recent COVID cases in Chaves County so far have been unvaccinated people.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of people have their opinions on vaccinations or no vaccinations. I've always said get your vaccination, you do, but I will always tell people do what you think's best for you and your family. But I'm okay with the vaccination, and I got it. And I, quite frankly, since I've had the vaccination, I could care less about COVID. I'm like, if I have the shot, if I get sick, I get sick. I'm not going to, walk around. It's just like any other vaccination I get. Guess what? I got one for the mumps and measles too. I don't walk around worrying about those either.
I got the shingles vaccination. Every year I get the flu vaccination.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why it's a invasion of personal rights to.
Yeah, and I understand
it's just
there's
a wise thing to do.
People that and some people obviously, the way this was made or the quickness in which it. Yeah, okay, I can say, it makes you nervous and things, but do your research. Then if that's legitimately your concern, then do some research. Go through and find the good, bad, and the ugly all of the vaccinations, and then do accordingly. But
Yep.
I depending on your lifestyle and situation, some people are dying from this, and I know a lot of people aren't, and I get that. But do you want to play craps with your life? That's up to you. I don't care. I got the shot and I've joked, but I'm half serious too. I was in the military. I got hit with anthrax. I got hit with all kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
At this point, that's like worrying about the horse escaping after the barn door's already open, kind of deal.
Yeah, I did a non-obligation summer ROTC at Fort Knox, and sure enough, they got this line. You walk down the line, you got people on both sides of you shooting you on the arm.
Yeah.
And some guy fainted.
Not to mention, I was working stealths and around the Ram, and dealt with this stuff called naphtha, which is this chemical agent they use to clean the Ram, which now they've got people with cancer scares and all anything else. Not scares, but cancer. And I've been exposed to all the things that people over the years are like saying they've had problems.
Yeah.
So people ask me about the flu shot. I'm like, the COVID shot.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever. Just throw another one in.
Yeah. I got a buddy of mine works on ships, and he's had a lot of benzene, kerosene, diesel, and chemical stuff, and it's catching up to him.
Yeah, it does. But anyway, I got off topic here.
So folks, I don't know how many of our listeners are on the receiving end of a judgment or get sued, But there's certain basic things that you get to keep that people can't take from you. Now, there's dollar limits.
Okay.
So there's dollar limit on the house, so many dollars with the car you can keep. You have to claim your exemptions to get them. You get $2,500 worth of jewelry. Now, retirement, it just says your retirement's protected. There's no dollar limit on it.
Well, it's kind of like, just to give a big case in point in a big high-profile way, O.J. Simpson. Like when in the civil cases afterwards, when they were trying to sue him for all the money to get,
And they did, yeah.
they did, but there were certain things that they couldn't touch, like his NFL pension and stuff like that. Where even that's a murder case, but in the civil court's a little different. But
Well, it was a civil judgment.
yeah. But basically that was protected. That's why people were mad, because you see OJ still hitting the golf course and everything. It's because his NFL pension's protected. They can't touch that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So there's no dollar limit on the amount of life insurance. Social Security cannot be garnished, either at the source or once it hits the bank. And that's a lot of people don't know that.
Okay.
But that's a protected asset. It's exempt from collection efforts.
Okay.
So there are certain things, everybody gets to keep. They can't just throw you in the street with nothing but the clothes on your back.
Sure.
Kind of thing.
Gotcha. So, well, good news there if you're in that kind of trouble. The better news would be do everything you can to avoid being in that situation. And that's for listening to Matt here at some of these conversations might keep you from having to see him for those kinds of things. But, and I guess in this, when living in the world we live in today, it's just a matter of education is key on these things. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of ways to protect, a lot of ways to do things, but you got to know. You just got to know about it, because if you don't, there's ways to protect yourselves, and let's face it, people will take advantage of people that don't know. Just because you're entitled to something, if you don't know it and no one tells you it, people will still don't care and will try to take advantage of you over that, and that's where the knowledge side is going to is basically protecting you.
Yeah, you need to do research. I'm not sure how much I trust the Google and the internet, but do some research. I've had another misconception is people say, well, I want to trust. And I'm like, well, tell me what the goal you're trying to achieve, and I'll tell you if the trust is going to get there. So, well, I want asset protection. Well, that's not going to work. When you set up your trust for you, then you have to give up total control to a bank or somebody else, trust department, someone. You cannot have any control, whatever, over your assets. And that's the only time it's an asset protection vehicle. And most people, they don't want to give up control.
Sure.
They want to be able to do whatever.
Usually people that got rich, that's because they made decisions to do so, and that they think their brain's pretty good at keeping those. And then I want to unleash that to somebody else.
Well, yeah, they don't want to give up control of their money, their investments, their whatever. And so as far as an asset, now, if you establish a trust and then you die and it goes to the kids, well, it's an asset protection vehicle for the kids at that point because the bank is the trustee, not them.
Sure.
A limited partnership is an asset protection vehicle. So that's about the only asset protection vehicle that I found in the state.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, and that's something, too, when you talk about these trusts and things, and talk about control and all that, but sometimes that's the good thing. Like you're saying, setting up the trust for like a kid's college. That's exactly why you do it, because you don't want control of it. You don't want people just to easily go in and take money from this thing, or certainly the kids. You don't want them access to it.
Well, not an 18-year-old, no.
Until they are of age where they can make the sound decisions to do it.
Well, yeah, the age of maturity is about 40 or 45.
Yeah. And that's still debatable. Depends on gender and region of country, I think, too.
Well, by that time, they've gone through the first divorce, they've gone through the first bankruptcy.
45-year-old male still may not be in the responsible. Female, absolutely. But those men, we're still those guys that have got a lot of. Just go watch America's Funniest Home Videos or America's Dumbest videos on TV. Any of those will tell you men in their 40s do dumb things all the time. I've seen them. They're on tractors. They're on. They're standing on roofs. They're doing all kind of stuff.
Darwinism at work right there.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. Oh, very good. But what is there anything else? I just saw the time. We probably need to wrap this up pretty soon here.
So the word for the day.
Yes.
Okay. So the Greek word is synkinesi. So it's S-Y-N.
Sounds like a fruit drink.
So the prefix is S-Y-N.
Okay.
Like synchronize.
Okay.
So the prefix means with. And the kinesi part is where we get the word kinetic.
Okay.
So, kinetic energy is energy in motion.
Gotcha.
So it means with motion.
Okay.
And you wonder, and if you guys can't see the look on Mike's face, it's like, okay, yeah, so what the hell does that mean? So in Latin, it's the same thing.
Okay.
If you look at the Latin word, it's emotion.
Oh.
There's that word motion in the word emotion. And most people don't realize that.
I never thought much about it. You're right.
And that's why if something, we see something emotional, we say, oh, that's very moving.
Yeah.
I'm moved by it. I'm touched by it. There's that idea of motion, and we rarely even think about it. But if in Greek or the Roman Latin, this emotion has that idea of movement going on.
Interesting.
So, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. Which everyone keeps saying that English is like the hardest language to learn because of the different meanings. Hey, you blame Latin. That's their fault. They did all that. As far as the double meanings of movements and everything else, I feel like Latin screwed us up there. That's not our fault.
I've had Europeans say, how come English is so hard? I'm like, hey, blame the Brits. We didn't start the language.
That's right. We just won. And we were already speaking it, so we said, Miles, just go ahead and keep going.
Blame the Celts and the Vikings. I don't know how this stuff got started.
Not our fault.
Yeah.
Although, with the modern slang, that's our fault.
Well, words are interesting. You go to, like in Scotland, one of the things is, we're going to cross the burn and the march dyke and take a wee spot. And it sounds like English.
Right.
It's a different language.
Yeah. But when I was a teenager, I got to go to Australia.
Oh, wow.
World Jamboree as a Boy Scout. And,
cool.
there was a bit of that when I first got into the country. And the guy I was going through in line in customs, and I was talking to a buddy behind me, and the line had moved up. And so the security guy tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, what's going on, mate? And I'm like, what? I won't get up a bit. And I'm like, after like 4 of those, he told me he wanted to scooch up a bit in line, but it was so accented, and it just, I was like, we're both speaking English, but we clearly weren't speaking the same language. And
some of those thick accents are hard to work through.
But after a while, next thing you know, after a couple weeks there, you start going blimey and start doing everything. Well, not blimey, it's Australia, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, my first animal in Africa, my first hunt, my professional hunter says, we see this animal. He says, lean across the bonnet and shoot it. So at least I knew what the bonnet was.
Right. I'm like, get that hat that women wear? Can I borrow your hat, lady? Oh, man. Of course, if your legal issues require more than listening to a 20-minute conversation between Matt and myself, I highly recommend that you give Matt a ring, a jingle.
Give us a ring, yeah.
Or what's the internet version of that in the British word? I don't know.
I don't know. Send us an email. Go to our website and send us an email.
Shoot us a virtual telly at BristolLawOffice.com.
Yes, 625-5284. Give us a ring. Come talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Even if you're not sure you need an attorney for something, you just need some answers and some questions answered. Matt will be happy to do that stuff, and
absolutely.
Let's find out if you need an attorney. I'd rather you go ask and turn out you don't than you go and don't ask, and turns out you did. And
A lot easier to fix things up front and on the back end, folks.
absolutely. Well, thank you, Matt. As always, appreciate
Mike.
the visit. We will see you next time here.
And happy anniversary to you and Kim.
Thank you very much. And we'll stay warm or cold, depending. Stay cool today
Stay flexible.
and dry by Friday.
There you go.
Of course, he's a Boy Scout. He's always prepared.
That's right.
He's probably got an umbrella that we don't even know about, ready to spring out in a moment's notice. Thanks, Matt. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
All right, it is.